great. A room full of powerful women. What a privilege to be up here. I'm Dr. Tristy Muir. I'm the medical director of the Pelvic Health and Continence Center here at Victory Lakes, and also the medical director of the Women's Service Line for UTMB. And I have to stop and thank the Oliver Center, who has provided Raymond to videotape this. And so this will be on a link that you can review this information and not have to take notes. So we have this one, and we have past Lunch Bunch presentations available, thanks to the Oliver Center. Menopause, okay? And we'll talk about hormones, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So really, menopause is pretty easy. After you stop laying eggs, they eat you. But unlike a chicken, approximately a third of women's life is actually spent in the menopausal years. So, you know, it truly is like running a marathon. The more miles that go by, the tougher it gets. And I'm told every day by the wonderful women that I help care for that growing old is not for sissies. So this information we're going to get today is going to really empower you to embrace the menopausal years and be proactive about addressing all the hormonal issues. And I think this is really a very good example of being proactive about menopause.
Hi guys, how are you?
Thanks. Are you ready to order?
I think we'll wait for our friend.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
Wow, that's a whole lot of health. How many are you working there?
44. I'm on the one-a-day Fruity Pebbles plant. Women our age shouldn't joke about vitamins.
Women who are not our age shouldn't say women our age.
Well, one day, very soon, you will thank me. I am leading the way through the menopause maze with my vitamins, my melatonin sleep patches, my bioidentical estrogen cream, progesterone cream, a touch of testosterone.
She's the hormone whisperer.
I am. I've tricked my body into thinking it's younger.
I've tricked my body into thinking it's thinner. Spanx.
And I'm telling you, no hot flashes, no mood swings, and my sex drive, it's right back to where it was.
Really? Hadn't heard.
Where are you getting your information?
From Suzanne Summers and her team of doctors. I'll get you a copy. It's a revelation.
You're taking medical advice from the woman who invented the Thigh Master?
Damn right. Have you seen my thighs? Okay, go ahead, laugh. It's working. By the time you ladies are 50, I'll be 35.
Oh, Samantha, she is just amazing. So, you know, she wants to be proactive about attacking menopause, and so do we all. But we have to be armed with a little bit of information. How does menopause affect our minds, our mood, heart, weight changes, sexual function, and vaginal health? And then, you know, the thing that we hear most about are hot flashes with menopause, but really menopause affects you from head to toe. And when we think about estrogen in the brain, there are many receptors for estrogen in the brain, and it elevates neurotransmitters such as serotonin, and serotonin is really has a profound impact on our mood. So that's something that we do want to have elevated, and estrogen does that. It also promotes neuronal growth and the formation of synapses. Again, good brain stuff. It acts as an antioxidant, so it kind of rids the brain of those free radicals that can damage the immune system, cause cancer, and different disease states. And if we look at the brain in particular, the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex are very rich in estrogen receptors. And those are involved in our memory, so our working memory, our verbal memory, and short-term memory. So when we start to lose that, then we can start to lose some of that function. And I don't know if any of you have ever had this happen to you, but you're speaking in a sentence and then all of a sudden the word doesn't come out. And so I have trouble remembering simple words like, and then it's just gone. Now, this is not isolated to women, though. So, you know, our significant others can run into this problem. So this man walks into the bathroom and he says, I've forgotten why I came in here. And there are many times that we'll walk into a room and not really remember why we wandered in that area. It's also important when we think about preserving our mental health and, you know, brain function, cognitive function, that we know the other things that impact that. And certainly some of the chronic disease states like diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, or smoking can increase your risk of developing dementia 20 or 30 years later if those are present by the age of 40. And if you have all of those things, you're diabetic, hypertensive, smoke, and have high cholesterol, that doubles your risk of having dementia 20 to 30 years later. And when you think about adding 20 to 30 years to 40, that doesn't seem too old. So, you know, we want to be in the best shape we can when we roll into that menopausal time period. And Samantha knows that food can really make the woman. And certainly the things that we put in our body can also be very impactful on our brains, on our risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. And it's found that people eating a Mediterranean type diet appear to have less development of Alzheimer's disease. And these foods that are rich in these antioxidants, again, ridding the body of the free radicals that can cause some of the chronic disease states and cancers, that's really important. And a lot of those foods that are rich in the antioxidants are vegetables and fruits, so seasonal items like that. Exercise is also very important to keep our cognitive function, and it improves blood flow to the brain and releases chemicals, and those are the endorphins that give you that runner's high that make you want to go back and exercise again because you feel so good having done it. It improves your physical function and cognitive ability, both in people without dementia, but also getting those people with dementia up and moving can improve their physical and cognitive function. Now, mood. So how's my mood? Call 1-800-YOU-RAGIN'. Now, that's an important thing, right? You want to have a good mood, and estrogen and hormones are certainly big players in preserving your mood. And also, we want to have our hormones and the heart very healthy. And there are many beneficial effects of estrogen on the blood vessels, on the heart. And what it can do is it can decrease the bad cholesterol that's roaming around in our blood vessels, increase the good cholesterol, so that's a good impact. It also dilates some of those blood vessels, so it gets more blood flow to the heart, and it has anti-atherogenic components too, to kind of make it so the plaque doesn't stick on there and things like that. All good things for the heart. And there was a study that came out a little over 10 years ago now, and that's the Women's Health Initiative study, the WHI. And what that study did was it took thousands of women and it randomized them to either receive a combination estrogen and progesterone called Prempro versus a placebo. Now, when they enrolled these women, it was not right after menopause. The average age was about 65 when they put people on these hormones, and then they followed them for years. There was another arm of the study that we'll talk about too, and that was an estrogen-only arm for those people that had had a hysterectomy in the past. So those taking the combination tablet, the Prempro, when they followed them, what they found was that there wasn't a decrease in cardiovascular disease in those women. There was actually increased events. And so it made everybody, very frightened about putting people on hormones. One of the other findings that they found was that there was a slight increased risk in that combined hormone group of breast cancer. So all the people that used to be on hormones all of a sudden stopped cold turkey, and hot flashes were rampant among the population in our country. 2 years later, an estrogen-only arm of the study came out, and there was no increased risk of cardiovascular disease and no increased risk of breast cancer with that estrogen-only arm. So that was very reassuring. And what we found out in the decades since that trial has come out is that timing of giving the hormones is very important. So giving the hormones right when you lose it, so right at the time of menopause, can preserve a lot of those important beneficial effects, so we don't have the ugly effects, but the beneficial effects, and that's the vasodilatation and decrease in atherosclerosis and coronary artery disease. I'm using those hormones right after that. And that can decrease the risk of heart disease and heart attack. The other thing that we found out in this decade since the WHI is that the way that you get the estrogen into your body is also very important. And the transdermal application or vaginal applications can even decrease cardiovascular disease more than the oral preparations. Now, whenever we take a medicine by mouth, it gets absorbed into our system and it passes through the liver. And in that pass through the liver, it can release some inflammatory mediators that then can go to the heart, and that is thought to be the reason that there may have been more heart-related problems in that 65 and older group when they just started them at that time. You don't get that pass through the liver. You don't get that increase in inflammation if you have a transdermal application of the estrogen gel or a patch. One thing that I think people are very worried about as well as they grow older is the development of blood clots and strokes. And it's always been thought that estrogen is related to blood clots and strokes. And this is a study, bars and graphs, and I apologize, but I think it nicely shows that our increased risk of strokes, even without hormones, increases from our 40s all the way to the 80s. You can see a drastic increased risk. That makes sense. Everything doesn't get better as we get older. But if we give people oral estrogens here, that increases your risk of getting a stroke or blood clot even more than just the baseline risk. And if you have that combination tablet, the estrogen and progesterone, you can see that there's an even more significant risk of having a blood clot or stroke. However, the good news is that transdermal application, again, avoids the release of those inflammatory mediators that are thought to be related to the stroke and the blood clots, and then there really doesn't have that increased risk by getting your hormones through the transdermal application. Weight gain is another thing that we really have to battle as we go through menopause. And if we look in the country, this has been a problem that's really kind of crept up on us over time. And in Texas alone, 30% of our population is obese. And when we look at menopause and weight gain, what we find is it doesn't stay steady, it doesn't go down, but we creep up on that scale, about an average of a pound a year. And so that can really add up. With obesity, there are a number of things that go along with that. Stroke, heart disease, problems breathing, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, urinary incontinence. Just come in, I can fix that. And lower sexual function, joint problems, arthritis, more hot flashes, and a lower life expectancy overall as those pounds kind of add on to that, for me, that midsection. But what's really interesting is that estrogen has a profound effect on weight gain. And in these two rats, they've had their ovaries out. Now, in this rat that did not receive any add back estrogen, you can see what happened to that poor little baby. Losing the ovaries and losing the estrogen, this rat then didn't want to go out and play. You know, he had decreased activity. At the same time, this little rat's its appetite increased enormously. And that's really not a very good combination, right? You're going to be sedentary and eat a lot. The other guy got his estrogen back, or girl, I should say, got her estrogen back, and she is just kind of cruising along and maintaining a trim rat figure. And in menopause, there is a lower metabolism as our baseline because we lose muscle all the time. And muscle, if we have a big bulky muscle, then that's kind of increasing our metabolism, and even when we're sitting there, we're burning more calories. So losing the muscle mass is really detrimental to us being able to maintain weight. And then it also has an increase in appetite, and estrogen can decrease appetite and also lower belly fat, kind of the dangerous type of fat to have. So estrogen can have beneficial effects. I know a lot of people are hesitant in taking any hormone replacement thinking that'll boost their weight gain, and it actually has the opposite effect. So menopausal hormone therapy is not associated with increased weight gain or an increase in that dangerous belly fat. And the hormone therapy is associated with a lower overall fat, improved insulin sensitivity, and a lower rate of developing type 2 diabetes. And again, we find that that transdermal application has even more beneficial effects than the oral, and that is preserving more lean body mass, the things that we want. So again, to be proactive, and we know Samantha's very proactive about her weight and keeping everything off. Many of us turn to different diets, and you can look at low carbohydrate diets, you can look at a low fat diet, and when they follow those people out 6 months, 2 years, what they find is either one of those diets work about the same. So the important thing is to pick something that you can follow and try to avoid the fad diet so that you're kind of having your weight yo-yo back and forth. Just pick something that'll work in your lifestyle and realize that this is going to be a lifestyle going forward. So my low-fat diet really works. The fat hangs lower and lower every day. So the other way that we can combat that weight gain is to exercise. And again, we have that loss of muscle mass and also a loss of bone mass. So keeping our bones healthy too by going and exercise is very important. And exercise burns the calories, and also resistance exercise can preserve some of that lean body mass. So build up that muscle because we're losing it all the time. So get out those weights. Don't just do the cardiovascular, but do some weights to get those muscles working and burning calories while we're just sitting here learning about hormones, right? And also the concern about sexual function in women. And if you look at women and men, we're certainly different beasts. So for sexual function for men, it's kind of like an off-on switch. And most of the time it's switched on, right? For women, we're much more complicated, many more dials and knobs, and our sexual function can relate to whether he took the garbage out today, all the way to our cultural beliefs, and all of those things kind of add in. Now, hormones can adjust the intensity, but it's just one of the knobs, so realize that it's not a be-all, end-all. And so our libido, if we look at that more carefully, what we find is the thing that kind of gets our engine running is testosterone. Of course, it's a male hormone, right? So testosterone is what kind of gets things up and going. 50% of that comes from the ovaries. 50% comes from the adrenal glands. So you can imagine if your ovaries are gone, then you've lost some of that testosterone and some of that drive. The other thing, once those get released into the bloodstream to go to their target organs and increase desire, what can happen is it's only the free testosterone that's actually working in your system. The stuff that gets bound to other things is not bioavailable. It's not functional. So sex hormone binding globulin, if you got a lot of it in there, it's going to bind up or gum up our testosterone, and it won't be available to increase the libido. And estrogens and sexual function, when you take a tablet, that again goes through the liver and gets metabolized. Now, in the liver, not only do we get some of the increase in inflammatory mediators, but we also get the production of sex hormone binding globulin. So with estrogen taken orally, that bumps that up, and it decreases the estrogen and testosterone that's going to be available for the rest of your body. So we have lower testosterone and lower estrogen. And if we look at estrogen, how that functions in sexual function, we know that testosterone is what gets the engine started, and the estrogen is the gas that keeps it going down the road. So that's going to increase your responsiveness, increase arousal, and lubrication. So again, an important little girl to have around when you want to have sex. And so the patch, how is that going to work? Well, that avoids that liver and increases the it avoids the increases in sex hormone binding globulin. So the testosterone that's released into your system, the estrogen that's given to your system through the patch or the gel, then that's going to be more bioavailable because it's not bound up in our sex hormone binding globulin. And vaginal health, I think, is critical, and one of the things that many of us don't really realize is that it could even be a problem. But after menopause, the superficial layers of the vagina really thin out, and the vagina can be more sensitive in a bad way, and it also can bleed more readily, and so of course be painful, itchy. And additionally, it can just makes sex something that you want to avoid completely. So if we look at this guy, he's got that typical look on his face after sex, right? Hey baby, I know it was good for me, so it must be good for you. But you can see that this poor woman's kind of thinking about it, right? She's going, well, wasn't that great? It's actually a little painful. And so then she's going to want to avoid having sex altogether. But using a vaginal application of estrogen can increase those surface cells in the vagina, make it lubricate better, make it less painful, less irritated, less likelihood of having any bleeding. The other really wonderful thing that estrogen can do in the vagina is that after menopause, kind of the pH of the vagina changes, and the vagina can be colonized with some of the bowel bacteria and lead to infections of the urinary tract. So bladder infections are more common after you go through menopause. But if we get the estrogen back on board, that can change the pH, get those bad bacteria out of the vagina, send them packing, and decrease the risk of having any bladder infections after that. There are a lot of symptoms, and again, we're very familiar with a lot of these menopausal symptoms. But we don't want to become one of the menopausal dwarfs, either itchy, witchy, sweaty, bloaty, sleepy, forgetful, and of course not psycho. And hot flashes are very common after menopause. Now, some people don't have any, and some people have them forever. And so we all kind of have our differences in how we have hot flashes. If you look at some of the over-counter varieties of treatment, none of those work nearly as well as estrogen works. Estrogen works the best to treat those hot flashes, night sweats, all those things that really can get under your skin. And I've heard a lot of people come in for bioidentical hormones, thinking that they need to get their saliva tested and then go to a compounding pharmacy to have the hormones specifically made to them. But what really bioidentical means is it just means that it has the same composition as the hormones that are in our body. And we have a number of those available with FDA packaging, and that can be a pill, it can be a patch, a gel, a spray, just comes in a vaginal cream or tablet. So there are a lot of varieties of ways that we can give back the bioidentical hormones that you need. So why should you go to a prescription estrogen? Well, what they found when they've looked at hormones that are compounded in compounding pharmacies is there's quite a variation in what you actually get. And you don't get that variation when you get a prescription medication. So I think that's really the way to go. You know, yams on the face probably won't work quite as well, but it is a transdermal application. So, you know, we've got to give Samantha a little credit there. Exercise can also improve our temperature regulation. And so that can decrease hot flashes. So getting out and exercising every day can also help with our hot flashes. And I think exercise is so important as we get older. We lose a lot of our core strength, and so you can, you know, have your balance out of whack. It's easy to fall, get some back pain. I know I've had a lot of that too. In getting out and getting that core stabilized so that you're not falling, and certainly getting our bone health so when we do fall, we're not breaking anything, is going to be very important. So be sure to exercise so that we can all age gracefully. And this is Eleanor, and she's my partner over at the Pelvic Health Clinic. And I tell you, Eleanor is doing a great job of aging gracefully. So when we look at all of this information, you say menopause, huh? So what you're saying is, I'm to look forward to 10 years of hell, followed by death. Am I missing anything? And what I would say is really to take menopause as a challenge. So it's a challenge that we're going to face and that we're going to have to really get in shape for. So meet the challenge with a commitment to training, and knowledge is power. And having this information so that you know how to attack menopause head on and not just let it kind of creep up on you, it's going to be very powerful. And for mind and mood, well, exercise is really great. Again, we're going to increase that blood flow to the brain. A Mediterranean diet rich in those antioxidants to keep our brain healthy and avoid chronic diseases, keep our mind sharp and our mood stable. And estrogen can help with some of the verbal memory and even stabilization of the mood. And it does that stabilization of the mood through serotonin, kind of increasing the serotonin in our brains. For cardiovascular, diet with antioxidants, again, our fruits and vegetables. You can get antioxidant supplements over the counter, but they're not nearly as good as just eating the fruits and vegetables that have a wonderful combination of them. Exercise is important, and there are many positive effects of estrogen, but we know timing's crucial for that too. So getting on the estrogen right after menopause is very important. And age-related weight gain, a pound a year. So to combat that tough one, you know, pick a diet you can stick to. Remember to make exercise part of your daily ritual, or at least weekly. Get in a few times that you're going out there to exercise. Don't forget to pick up the weights and increase your muscle mass. Estrogen can reduce insulin resistance. It can decrease your appetite and decrease your belly fat. So all good things when we're trying to combat that weight gain. For vaginal health and sexual function, estrogen maintains that vaginal skin and improves lubrication. It decreases painful sex. And you know that saying, if you don't use it, you lose it? So you got to exercise the vagina too. For menopausal symptoms, estrogen is the best medicine there is. Exercise can help, again, with our thermal regulation. So that can help for those people that can't take estrogen. And I would say, you know, if you take one thing home from this is that I have really switched over to a transdermal application of the estrogen. So I really firmly believe that's the safest way that we can get the estrogen into those bodies that have lost it with the ovaries giving up. And it's bioidentical and very well tolerated by everyone.